Hey everybody, it's Lizzie. Welcome back to my channel. This weekend we will be camping at Broken Arrow Wilderness in Fullerton, Nebraska. This is a privately owned campground and it is amazing and I'm super excited to share it with you guys. As usual, I will leave links below to their Facebook pages, place you can reserve, anything else I experienced along the way, any information I can give you, I will link below. Sadly, I only stayed Saturday and part of Sunday because I had to work on Friday night, so I got as much footage as I could, but it really limited the amount of time I had to do activities at the park. So forgive me for not having a very full video. At the end of this video, I will leave my official review of the campsite. But as always, definitely check them out and see for yourself. I just try to inform you guys on what I noticed at the campground so then you can make better decisions about where you want to go camping. So go ahead and scroll to the end if you want the review, or watch through the whole thing if you want to see a vlog and a review. Favorite sign in the whole place. This is on the entrance of the park. I think it is awesome and it speaks true to the people in this area. So yeah, I really love this campsite. I've fallen in love with it and I can't wait to come back. It looks like they may have like one designated tent site area, but I'm pretty sure if you were to ask and pay for a spot, you could really camp anywhere in this park. There's a lot of just open green area, a lot of trees around. Like I said, they're all acorn trees, so if you're trying to tent camp under an acorn tree in the middle of fall, it's gonna be pretty lumpy. But I really like this place. I can't wait to come back. They do lots of different events, like Jeep events and concerts and weddings and wedding receptions and just all kinds of really cool things at this whole park. We have hiking trails out here and Jeep trails, but the trails are closed this weekend because they had a hunting group come in and they must have been guiding them or something, so they closed all the trails, so I did not get to see the trails. But it's actually a really cool place. I hope we come back here soon. I just finished this book, Deep Creek by Pam Houston. It's a really good book. It's about her ranch and basically her entire life. It's really interesting. I am out here doing some night fishing on the river. I don't know if you guys can see that. Trying for some catfish. Gonna fish for about an hour, see if I catch anything. Our campsite is within walking distance of the Cedar River. There's the river. There's our campsite. They do tanking out here on the Cedar. So they got couches out here for that. Pretty windy today. I went catfishing last night. Did not catch anything. Got Mr. Poncho. Those are all acorn trees. And because it is September, the acorns are falling and we had several fall on our head. I had to move my tent clear out here so that way they didn't hit the tent all night and wake me up. But those are all acorn trees. A lot of the campsites are pretty wacky. They have 2 power boxes on each side. And I mean, there's like spots back in there and there's spots, you know, kind of vertically, traditionally. And there's just like a lot of random spots everywhere. They have a couple 50 amp, a lot more 40 amp, but really nice camp spots. I saw one spot that had full hookup like by the entrance. Like 47 sites, I believe, throughout the whole thing, but you can actually rent some like bungalows that they have. They're currently renovating a lot of them, but we kind of peeked into one set of like little cabin bungalow thing, and it looked really nice and quaint. I think that's really cool. Here's one of the little cabin bungalow things you can rent. It looks really nice on the inside, and they all have this big fire pit. The campsites have water hookups. They don't have dump stations, but they do have water hookups. So you can actually pull a lot lighter camper and use the water here. They also have an outdoor stage where they have concerts sometimes, and then it's hooked to their like event building. You can have weddings in your wedding reception here. They have a church here as well. Church they have on site that you can actually get married in. It's actually really cute. In a really beautiful spot. It's a little bit older, but I think the inside's gorgeous. Here is a little bit of a aerial view of Broken Arrow Wilderness. It's right off the Cedar River by Fullerton, Nebraska. I am currently zooming into sort of their event center area. They have a church, an office, and then that big thing to the right is for concerts and other big like wedding receptions and different events. And now I'm zooming into where we camped specifically, which was towards the river. It was also the only place we could fit our camper, but as you can see to the bottom there, that's tanks. So you can go tanking through this company, and you can camp through that whole ring right there. All right, everybody, here is my official review of the Broken Arrow Wilderness in Fullerton, Nebraska. Fullerton, Nebraska is in a really awesome area that has lots of rivers. The Loop River is right down the road. The Cedar River goes right through the park, and I believe the Platte River isn't that far either. So it has a lot of unique features as big trees and bluffs that a lot of places in Nebraska don't have unless you're next to a river. So that leads me to the conclusion that this is an amazing place to do hiking trails. Sadly, the hiking trails were closed while I was there because they had a hunting group, you know, kind of in and out of the trails. They wanted to keep people safe. And they also have Jeep trails, which is super awesome and unique. So if you have a Jeep and you were looking for a new place to go camping and, you know, ride your Jeep, definitely check out Broken Arrow Wilderness. I unfortunately can't speak to the trails because I didn't get to go on them, but I have had friends who have done the Jeep trails and they love them. Funny story, this camp actually used to be used for 4-H camp back when my mom was in 4-H. So this place has a lot of history. A lot of the buildings, the outbuildings, like the cabins and everything, are pretty old, and they're slowly starting to re-renovate things. So that's awesome. You can rent bungalows. There's tons of campsites, like 47 campsites. One thing to mention, we have my parents have a rather large camper. I think it's like 42 foot, which is a pretty dang big camper. And there's only a few spots that we would have been able to fit our camper because they actually put a lot of the electrical sites just in sections between trees, and which is awesome. I love that. But if you have a longer camper or a bigger camper with lots of slides, it is going to be more difficult for you to be able to park your camper in just any spot. There are so many spots. There was only a handful of campers when we were there this weekend. I don't know if that's a common thing, but I do think it's a bit more of a quiet campground on a weekend where there's not an event. Before you decide to book, reserve a site, definitely make sure there's not a big event going on, because otherwise you'll be in the midst of it and your camping experience probably won't be that great. The river runs through the campsite. The campsite we had, which I will list it somewhere in this video, what campsite we had, was actually right off the river. You just walked across the road and the river was right there. They have tanking at this facility. You can Jeep, obviously, tank, tube, hike the trails, go fishing. I did go fishing for a little bit. So I love that the river is right there. I didn't see a ton of like designated tent areas, but I do believe you can pretty much tent anywhere in the entire park. It does say on their website that a shower house is included in that. I didn't see a shower house, but that means there is one somewhere. So if you're into tenting, that would be awesome. One thing about the tenting is, though, I would be sure to not tent in the fall there, because the entire campsite is fully mature acorn trees, and whenever the wind would blow, you would get pelted with acorns. So the ground is extremely lumpy. So as someone who tents, I moved my tent far away from those trees because I did not want to lay on any acorns at night. So keep that in mind. As far as other amenities, they do have, I think I said that, primitive like camp, little bungalows. You can actually rent some of their places for retreats, wedding receptions. They do have a concert place and like a reception hall and a church. A lot of their buildings are quite rough, I will say, but the insides are really nice, and on top of that, they're constantly renovating. I will say the price to camp is a little bit more expensive than like if you were to camp at an NRD or if you were to camp at a recreation area, state park, whatever. However, it is a private campground, and I think it's pretty awesome that it's on the river like that. So, I don't know, we were willing to pay a little bit more. I read that tent sites are $20, which is pretty high in comparison to other places, but I don't know, I think it's pretty awesome. I think mom and dad paid $65-70 for 2 nights, so keep that in mind. I will link the prices down below as well, but I think overall it's a really awesome campground, and if you're into kayaking, tubing, tanking, jeeps, just like fun activities like that, this is your campground. I think that's awesome. There's not very many campgrounds like that around, and it's just a really awesome recreation campground. If you had a UTV, ATV, you would have a ton of fun at this campground. So I highly recommend that. Like I said, some of the buildings are a little rough around the edges. You also cannot bring your own firewood. You have to purchase their firewood at their office. But other than that, I have no complaints about that place. It was really nice and relaxing weekend, and I'm so happy I got to learn about it. Since we had to check out of the campground so early, I decided to check out another passport stop in Genoa, which is right down the road from Fullerton. This is the U.S. Genoa Indian School that was in business till the 30s, until the Great Depression. Keep watching if you want to hear more information about this place. I am sitting in front of, which I don't think you can see, the Indian school in Genoa, Nebraska. I remember my grandma taking us here when we were kids, me and my cousins, and I've always known this was here, but I haven't been back. But this year they're on the passport, so I decided to stop on my way home from camping because it's like 18 miles away. And wow, it's amazing. I highly recommend it. I'll give you guys a little bit of information. Back in the 1800s, schools were put in place to take Indian children and basically wipe their brains of any memory of their Indian culture. And this was actually one of the largest ones in the US, and it was huge. It was like half of the town. It was its own campus, and they lived, you know, off of the land, and they had cattle, and they raised cattle, and they were forced to speak English and cut their hair, and they dressed in uniform, and it was over 40 nations all together in one area. And you know, one nation, Indian nation, is not at all the same from another, and just to think what they had to go through. There are no currently, the lady said she didn't think there were currently any alive people who went to the school, but for a long time they did have reunions, and they to this day have healing festivals. I wouldn't call it a festival, it's like, oh, whatever it was like a healing ceremony to honor the culture that was lost here, to honor the Indians that died here because of the diseases. It's the reason they made it a museum, and they have a foundation for it, is to honor the culture lost and the terrible things that happened here, to try to make it a place of healing. And just, there's a lot of stories she told me of people, you know, coming back here, and I read, you know, they've interviewed people who've been here, and they've tried to make it a place where the pain isn't as bad, you know, to remember. she told me a story about a gentleman who met someone in Omaha. He was from Omaha, and this couple from here had been in Omaha, and he was Indian, and they had gotten the topic of the Genoa Indian School. And anyways, one day they decided to visit it, and as they were walking along, there's some logs that have names of every student that has ever been here. He had found his mother's name, and he had no idea his mother had ever went to this school. And honestly, just things like that bring me close to tears, because think of the pain and suffering his mother went through that he had no idea. His mother died young, and so the sons really didn't have a lot of information on their mother. And just seeing it, and she said he just cried. He just cried and cried and cried, just seeing her name there, you know, discovering this whole part of her life that they had never knew existed. And so yeah, it's awful what happened here in many other locations. It's awful, but I'm glad that someone is doing something about it. They don't just close the doors and walk away. There is a whole entire foundation. They have annual gatherings. People can come, and you know, they have reunions when people were alive, and just all kinds of things. It closed finally in the 30s, and the Great Depression really had a lot to do with the closing of the schools. But thank God for that. I guess good things did come out of the Great Depression, even though all that culture was lost. Many Indians who went to school here, when they graduated, weren't really welcome back at home, because the skills they learned here were for the white man's world. It was carpentry and blacksmithing and tailoring and, you know, baking and things that were of no use where their family was from. So anyways, I definitely highly recommend this place. It's very interesting, a lot of good information. If you're into Indian culture and reading about things that have happened, I highly recommend this place. There's a lot of good information. Watch the video. That is the most informative thing I found. I will leave links below of some information about this place, some articles, and everything else about it that I can link for you guys to come check it out.